Everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live. My name is Ellen Rogan, and as always, I have great information to help you in every area of your business. And I'm really excited about our special guest today, Holly Buchanan. We're going to be talking about why clients really hire you. As advisors, I know you're thinking a lot about getting clients in the door and why they hire you, and focusing on your process and your deliverable and what your office looks like. But what is it that really makes that shift? I think that it's easy to think it's your credentials or some of these other things, and not that those aren't important, but Holly has done extensive research about why is it that people really hire an advisor, and also why do they leave their advisors? So Holly's been a guest several times before on Horse's Mouth Live, and so I'm thrilled that she agreed to come back. Let me give you a little bit about her official background. Holly Buchanan is a popular and excellent speaker and trainer and author. She spent the last 20 years researching how professionals win and lose in trust and credibility. Her company, Buchanan Marketing, works with financial services companies, professionals who want to be more successful by understanding really how clients make decisions, why they buy financial products and choose their advisors. She's the author of a really wonderful book called Selling Financial Services to Women, What Men Need to Know, and Every Woman Would Be Surprised to Learn. Welcome, Holly. I'm so glad to have you back.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, and what I love about your work is that you really do research in your own kind of research and understanding. I love that you take this and are able to explain it in ways that land for people. So thrilled you're here. And if we think about advisors are, if you're not growing, you're shrinking. So you're always looking, hopefully, for new clients, if not for you, for your firm. But what do you think is one of the most important things for advisors to know in terms of why clients actually hire them?
Yeah. The number one thing I would say is you don't always know as an advisor why someone is hiring you or firing you. Like, my expertise is what it looks like from the client side of the desk. I spend my time with the clients, and it is shocking the number of times they will tell me something and I say, so did you share that with your advisor? And they say, no. I'm like, wow. So here's an example. I think everybody knows you have to have basic credentials. From the client side, they call it the alphabet soup after your name, which is you have to have a base level of saying, I know what I'm doing. I work for a reputable firm to get the business. But so often, business is won and lost in small moments. We think it's the big, grand gestures. But one example was, I've got a friend, Joe, and a business owner, and his business was going gangbusters, a whole other level financially. So one of his colleagues said, Joe, I'm going to introduce you to my advisor because you need way more help than you're currently getting. So Joe took the meeting, and honestly, it didn't start out great because Joe is this laid back guy, and he felt like the advisor was this buttoned up kind of alpha male, and Joe's like, that's not my jam. But he stuck with it, and he did end up hiring that advisor. And I said, Joe, what made you decide to hire him? And Joe thought about it, and he said, we were walking down the hall, and there was a piece of crumpled up paper next to a waste paper basket. And he bent down and picked it up and put it in the basket. And Joe said, that sent me a message. He pays attention to detail. He cares. He isn't waiting for his staff to pick it up. And it just kind of broke through the stereotype. Joe had made some assumptions about this financial advisor, but I'm like, how interesting. And I'm not saying, everybody go out and have a piece of crumpled up paper next to a waste paper basket. but it is a sense of advisors, you don't always know why clients are choosing you or choosing to leave you.
So if an advisor's wanting to be more deliberate about the things that do have, if we're not going to stage a crumpled up piece of paper there, what are some things that you find are not necessarily things advisors are thinking about that actually do make a big difference?
One thing is, and it goes to that, how do you break through a stereotype? Because when clients, if it's a prospective client meeting with you, they're going to make a bunch of immediate assumptions, which may or may not be true. So what can you do that can break a stereotype? Like another example is a long-term care salesman, and he was in one of my seminars, and he was sitting in the back row with all like the young guys, and they were kind of yucking it up. And I thought, I'm going to go back and I'm going to kind of pick on him a little bit, but I'm just going to talk to him. And I said, so why did you get into long-term care insurance? Thinking he's going to say unlimited income, I get to do my own schedule, I get to be my own boss. But he said, my grandmother raised me. She was my rock. And we find out after that she had died that she had been abused in her nursing home. And he said, it is my mission to make sure that never happens to anyone else's mother or grandmother. And I was like, wow, shame on me for stereotyping you. But I told the young man, I hope you share that story, because it immediately broke that stereotype of, oh, you're an insurance salesman, and really got to the heart of why he does what he does. So anything you could do to kind of share your why to break through a stereotype, even if it's, we have, the pictures in our office, even if it's Zoom, we've got the pictures like my little feather there. So it's a chance, even though the bookcase, could give you a chance to, hey, here are the books that I'm reading. Anything that can be a conversation starter that will break through a stereotype that they may have that you don't even know. And the second piece of advice I would give is, are you getting feedback? And, client surveys, could give you some information, but even just the people in your office, are they seeing how you interact? What can you do to get feedback? Like one of my favorite things to ask, because most people don't like giving feedback. Say, hey, can you get your feedback? And you're kind of like, oh boy, if I say something negative, they're not going to like it. It can be really uncomfortable. So what I suggest is to say, hey, so here's the situation. Here's how I handled it. I'd love your opinion. I'd love your advice. If you were me, how would you have handled this? So even if they're not in the room with you, if you had a difficult conversation with the client, and again, respecting confidentiality, keep it super high level. It's just a good way to get someone else's perspective, because we all have the blind spots. And I do a whole other seminar on this, which is the disconnect between how we see ourselves and how other people see us. Like Ellen, have you had any experience or thoughts on that?
Well, a couple of things as you were talking about asking for feedback. And then I want to also ask you how advisors can kind of invite that with their clients to build their relationship, so there's not this stuff hanging out there. But I was thinking, and this was many years ago because our kids are young adults now, but when I used to call references for babysitters, people don't like, unless someone's, if there was an awful thing, but people don't like to talk bad about people. And so one way I would invite them to share, and it could be a way to invite feedback from clients or team, is saying, was there anything that was less than excellent? Because less than excellent isn't like it was terrible that you didn't like about this person. And then they go, well, and then you start to hear things and you can decide whether you care about those or not if it's interviewing somebody, a reference. But for a client, that might be a really nice way to ask the question, I would think. My question to you, Holly, is at the start of a relationship, are there things advisors can do to make it safe or welcoming for clients to give them feedback if something isn't working, so that they don't have to find out after the client leaves to go to a different advisor?
Right. A couple of thoughts on that. One thing is just the power of listening and knowing that the great sales pros will tell you it is not what you're telling your clients that's causing them to trust you. It's what your clients are telling you. So just being super aware. I think Mitch Anthony did research that said 49 out of every 60 seconds advisors are doing the talking. And I get that, because like, if I can just share all my knowledge and everything I can do for them, I know they're going to hire me. But it's that blind spot. It's usually more, what can you get them to tell you? So to your question, Ellen, how can you create that welcoming environment? Two simple techniques. One that I use all the time when someone is speaking, and then they'll kind of pause and scratch their chin and say, like, why do we say, like we're trying to hold the floor. We know if we stop talking, they're going to jump in and interrupt us. So I'm a big fan of, it looks like they finished, but just wait it out. Like, just button it up, even for like 2 or 3 seconds, because usually that's when a magic nugget comes out. Something that they're like, they pause and they're thinking. So something as simple as that, just wait out that pause, and you will see it everywhere. Like, you're going to see the and this wait it out. It sends a sign of respect. I care about what you have to say. So that's a big one, just in creating that safety to get information from them. Another big one is when you're having a conversation, and especially if you're sharing information, and you pause. And a lot of times as advisors and as professionals, we say, does that make sense? And like, whoever raised their hand and said, I'm a complete idiot, I didn't get that at all. and we also kind of sense that they're saying, did I do a good job of explaining that? Yeah, pat me on the back. So I used to say, pause and say, do you have any questions? But when I did that, I got the, no, keep going. But there was a thought bubble. So instead, what I do is I say, I just want to pause for a moment. What are your thoughts? Not what are your questions? What are your thoughts? Because there's a thought bubble. And as an advisor, you want to get the information in that thought bubble. Like, that's the number one thing. When you see that thought bubble, you want to get that information out of them. So that's just a simple way. When asking for direct feedback for clients, sometimes they don't really know. Like, and again, if it's something they didn't really like, they might feel uncomfortable sharing it with you. But I'm a big fan of, when you're having anything, and just kind of pause and just say, hey, is there any important information I'm missing? Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't covered? Like, and just say, hey, like, again, this is a safe space. This is about you, not me, to provide that safe space. So if there is something specifically, and you could say, even at the end of the meeting, is there anything that's less than excellent, or even just, is there anything you'd like to do differently about how we communicate? And then just sit back and button it up.
I don't want to skip over your comment about noticing they have a thought bubble, because that's assuming that the advisors aren't thinking, okay, what do I want to say next? And I want to make sure that I'm sharing this, and this is a perfect solution for them, because it's easy for us to get right back here instead of putting our energy out there. And just even having an awareness of, how are things landing for that person? What's really happening? I don't think there's a problem with, people don't get listened to in general. And if you can create that space, I've found that people just absolutely adore that, and that it's okay. You said that pause. I think Lisa Dad, who is a sales trainer who's been on the show a couple of times, said that the biggest problem advisors have is that they're always advising, and sometimes you just need to stop.
Is that true?
And so to just know it's okay if you don't know what you're going to say next. I've done this a bunch of times. I'll have had a thought. If I don't write it down, and there's this pause and someone's finished, I'll just say to them, I just need a minute. I was really listening to what you were having to say. No one's going to be upset with that you don't have like your next response. They'll probably be complimented that you were giving them your full attention. So you mentioned earlier that there's kind of blind spots that advisors can have. What else have you seen are blind spots in terms of building trust or credibility, or reasons why people might actually leave an advisor?
Yeah, in my discussions with clients, there was a phenomenon that I called waiting for him to retire or die. And this came up so often, and it was a lot with the female clients. I think maybe they felt a little more disrespected, or there was like the family advisor, and as they inherited money and earned more money, they felt kind of like, well, I'm going to be respectful and stay with this advisor we've been with for a long time. But man, like if one more thing goes wrong, if I get disrespected one more time, if I'm leaving. So and all the research out there shows that advisors overestimate how satisfied their clients are. So I would say there is that blind spot, and a part of it comes, again, that disconnect between how we see ourselves and how other people see us. Like one thing that I talk about is a little bit is about different personality types, and there are a ton of different ones out there, but even just on a super high level, if you look at two decision-making styles, like one is the take action type. And these are the more CEO, professional, heart-driven, just give me the executive summary, big picture, let me take action. Talk to me about an opportunity I might not know about. That's their style, like give them the short information, let them make a decision. And I find some of advisors tend to have that decision-making style, whereas the think it throughs are those more deliberate decision-making styles. They want a lot more information. They want a lot of details. They really get down in the weeds. And the two styles can kind of do this. So I just say, be aware of whatever your style is. If you are a think it through and you're dealing with, with more of a take action, can you get to the point? Right? Just, here's the short answer is yes. The short answer is no, then go into the why. Like something I saw was really helpful. And it's funny, every time I say now more than ever, trust is so important, but today I'm like, no, really now more than ever, trust is everything. But my financial institution was really smart. They sent me an email basically saying to the effect of, in light of recent headlines, we want to provide some information about, the strength of our company, the series of safeguards, and gives just like two or three things. We've got the stringent stress test, blah, blah, blah. But then it said attached is, a longer document with more information. We're really a job for the think it throughs who are never going to open that attachment. But you hit like the three highlights. But for the think it throughs that really do, and advisors like, nobody reads that stuff. And I'm like, you would be surprised. It's not many people, but the ones that read it, like I talked to a woman the other day and she said, I got this really long, like 24-page document. And she said, I read through it and I felt much better afterwards. So it was that it met the needs of both styles. The one that's saying, here are like the top three things. Great. But for the people that say, it's basically, hey, we're paying attention. like I was talking about marketing the other day, and a good marketing strategy is we're paying attention. We're being proactive in our communication. But that's just a simple example of, like I was talking to one advisor, it's like, I'd never put that attachment. Nobody's going to read it. I'm like, not many, but just because you wouldn't read it doesn't mean nobody would read it.
That's really good advice, because would never read it person. And so I
Right,
tended
yeah.
to, or I could say, I didn't mind if people took a longer time to make decisions, but that detail thing was challenging for me when I was an advisor, because I'm such a macro person. I also hired around that. But so with all like the stuff that's happening in now more than ever, but in the markets and
Yes.
uncertainty, which doesn't ever seem like it's coming down, but what are some things, that other things advisors can do? I'm hearing like providing information in multiple ways is important. What else do you think that advisors can do to build credibility and trust and actually calm their clients down?
Yeah, some of it is it's taking, again, kind of the two different approaches. One approach is understanding the pain points, like, give your client the chance to say, here's what I'm afraid of, here's my pain point, I call it catastrophizing, but the think it throughs, that's kind of their default. Like, they're going to catastrophize. What if we lose all of our money and the market goes to nothing, blah blah blah. So some of it is just listening to that. But then the flip side is, this is where it's just, if you can just be clear, be calm, and be confident. So listen. Be clear, like, don't get into a lot of the marketing speak. And that confidence, just speaking at a conference last week, and this came up, and a couple of the advisors said, I come up like, what, I'm not rattled. I say, hey, look, we've got a plan in place. We realize that things like this can happen. And we've got the plan, we've got the long term. Here's what we have put in place to mitigate the risk. And just, if you can just be kind of that calming, centered, clear voice. Back not recently, but the last really crazy time, the clients I talked to said, just the fact that my advisor was paying attention, and they said, they kind of talked me off the ledge, but they said, their calmness helped calm me.
Yeah. So
also, I was just going to say really quick, like, there's such an opportunity right now. If you can give them clear, bite-sized chunks, because people are talking right now. And if your client can say, yeah, I was talking to my advisor and they said like these two things that I found really helpful. And the person they're talking to is like, I haven't heard from my advisor at all. There could be some real referral opportunities.
And what I also heard in what you just said is they're giving something specific that the person could remember. So it wasn't like this long thing that people, in the calm part of it versus, I use conviction versus confidence, same. And what I've seen with the advisors that I'm working with, the ones that have conviction and that emanates not hubris, not like I know exactly what's going to happen, their clients can't help but feel better. And you had mentioned calm is so important. Calm is contagious, and so is stress. So one of the things I found really important is that people not only are showing that they're convicted and confident, but they're actually feeling that, because there's something called pheromones, where it's like, even through Zoom, clients can almost smell this on you if you're scared. So you got to have your own ways of getting centered in this, and of course you may have periods where you're worried about your practice, but I think that's so important that you're sharing. So in the last
I was going to say just real quick, do you have a recommendation for someone to help them get calm and centered before a call or a Zoom?
Well, I'm a big proponent of having a meditation practice, but it can be one thing that I teach in my classes is 3 breaths that I got from the Search Inside Yourself Institute, this 3 breath practice, which is first breath, focus on the breath, second breath, relax the body, and third breath, silently ask what's important now. I love that question. What's important now? And it can just be that break, but breathing for most people, not everyone, but for most people is very grounding, especially if you can make your exhale longer than your inhale. It slows your heartbeat down. So, and everyone's different. So I think it's important to find your own self-calming methods, working out, being in nature, whatever it is. So thank you for asking. I think that's super important. Holly, in just the few minutes we have left, what do you think, how are ways that you've seen advisors effectively differentiate themselves from others and really communicate their value to clients?
Yeah, and I'll kind of bring it back to the 2 types because it's different. But for the the take action type, they tend to think, I'm really smart, and they also tend to think I can do this myself. The good news is they, I think, in the current state of things, are more likely to realize they need a professional. Actually, I was looking at an article before saying that the research shows more people are saying right now, I need an advisor. But it's a big thing about what are the opportunities that you can bring them that they can't find themselves. I was just at an alt seminar last week, and it was very much around the, oh my gosh, between, beyond this, the traditional stocks and bonds and annuities, what else is out there? So if you can differentiate yourself, and again, when appropriate for the clients, are there alternative investments? What can you bring to the table that they can't do themselves? On the think it throughs, I think the big thing is, again, that listening, like get their concerns, get that thought bubble out, because most advisors aren't listening to them. It's still pretty rare that you get that advisor who asks really good questions and actually listens to the answer. Again, it's not about what you tell them. It's what about you get them to tell you. And for those think it throughs, that why, like the long-term care insurance salesman. So they know, like, you actually have their best interest at heart, because that's a stereotype. They tend to be the skeptics. Like, you're just out for the commission. So anything you can do, and something as simple, and this would be kind of a great way to wrap. One of my favorite new questions, I no longer ask, how are you? Does anyone know how to answer that question? Holly, how are you? Fine.
Fine.
I mean,
Fine.
we all just kind of lie and say, okay. So instead I say, what's going on in your world? Because now people know what to say. Holly, what's going on in your world? Well, my 89-year-old mother had a stroke, went into the hospital, went into a care center. It was covered by Medicare, but now we're actually dealing with the long-term care insurance. And I'm working with these long hours and traveling and try to, but I mean, look at the quality of the answer. It's a much better question. So I'm a big fan of, instead of asking, how are you? Just say, hey, what's going on in your world?
I love that. It's also not a goofy question. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you'll hear what to ask instead, and you're like, it doesn't really feel like me. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I could really ask that, but what's going on in your world feels also authentic. And it could be something surface, or it could be something like really what's going on. I love it. Holly, you always bring great practical information to any conversation that you have. If people are out there looking for consulting or great speaker or moderator, and they want to find out more about you, where should they go?
Definitely, my website is hollybuchanan.com. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. So reach out through any of those places, and I'd be delighted to talk to you. Obviously, I spent a lot of time talking to people and learning from your experiences. So I'd love to connect.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for your great information today.
Thank you, Ellen. Always, I love talking to you. You bring such
fun.
great
I know
energy.
all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, we're out of time. We'll have you back. And thank you to all of you listening and watching. I'm so grateful that you're here. And if you want more information about me, you can find it at ellenrogan.com. And if you go to ellenrogan.com/horse's mouth, you can download my special report, What Extraordinary Advisors Know That Others Don't. I have some master classes coming up and some other cool stuff. So let's connect. And the question to ponder today is, I was going to say, I guess I'm asking you, what's going on in your world? That's a really wonderful question I'd like to leave us with. And remember, be great and create great every single day.